Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's program. I am Adam Rubin, the Director of Interpretation here at the Chicago Architecture Center, and you are tuning in tonight for Investment Through Preservation in Roseland, one of our programs, part of our Open House Chicago program. So we are going to be starting in about 8 minutes from now. We've got about 32 people here so far, 34, 35, it keeps going up, probably about 200 people signed up for this evening. So go ahead, get situated, pour a glass of wine, have a little dinner, get comfortable on the couch, and we will get started shortly. So I'm going to turn off my camera for about 2 minutes, and I'll come back on and we can chat a little bit among the people who are here, talk a little bit about Open House Chicago, and I'll give you a little bit of a rundown of what to expect tonight, what kinds of programs are on the docket, and I'll talk to you in just a moment. So stay tuned. Hello again, everybody. If you are newly signed in, you are here for Investment Through Preservation in Roseland, part of our slate of virtual programs for this year's Open House Chicago Festival. If you are just getting in, we invite you to introduce yourself in the chat if you haven't done so already. We can start with an easy one. Where are you tuning in from tonight? Let us know where you're watching. We're happy to give you a shout out if you want one. If you want to be left alone and anonymous, then I'll leave you alone and relatively anonymous. John says he's watching from Chicago. Always a good start is to have a Chicago audience. Got Buffalo Grove, we got St. Charles, we got Madison, Wisconsin, Columbia, Missouri, Uptown. Can you tell this is my favorite part of the program where I get to just shout out names? It's like a telethon. Here, I'll even give you another question if you feel like you've already covered where you're from and want something a little bit more sophisticated. I'll also, if you'd like to answer, what is your favorite Chicago neighborhood commercial street that has benefited from historic preservation? Set you up a little bit for tonight's discussion. So what commercial stretch in a neighborhood? We could answer, if you wanted to answer Michigan Avenue or State Street, that's okay. The Loop is also a neighborhood, but thinking broadly across the entire city, what is a commercial stretch that has benefited from preservation that you enjoy? Let's see, what are we getting in here? Hello, Hallie from Evanston. I'll let you stay anonymous there. Let's see, we've got somebody from Hazelcrest. Lisa says Lincoln Avenue. A lot of Lincoln Avenue. Any particular section of Lincoln Avenue, Lisa? Great answer, by the way. I should also say I enjoy it as well. Let's see, you've got John doing a plug for Old Fashioned Donuts on South Michigan Avenue in Roseland. Very appropriate for tonight's program. Hey, Roy from Flossmoor. Kathy says Milwaukee Avenue in Wicker Park, another excellent answer. Got Georgine from Prospect Heights. We got Charla, who is a fan of Old Town on Wells. Classic. Lots of districts that have benefited from historic preservation. Got Steve. Hey, Steve from Crestwood. Hey, Jennifer from Edgewater. So if you are just tuning in, welcome. You are here for Investment Through Preservation in Roseland. I will be giving you a little bit of a lead up about what this program is about what kind of other OHC programs we have on the docket that you can still sign up for. I'll tell you a little bit about what else we're doing with Open House Chicago, a little bit about the app, some housekeeping here and there before we get started. I'll get started on that in about 2 minutes. While we still wait for some more people to come in, please let us know in the chat where you are watching from tonight. And if you have a favorite commercial stretch in Chicago, particularly in a neighborhood that has benefited from historic preservation, let us know, since that's the theme of tonight's conversation. A theme of tonight's conversation. We'll cover a lot. Hi, Michelle, how are you doing? Beth likes Lincoln Square with a question mark, and I'm going to give you an affirmative yes, Lincoln Square would count. Jackie loves 53rd Street in Hyde Park. She says it is simply the best, with 3 exclamation points. Krista is watching from West Humboldt Park. Hello, Krista. Favorite Chicago neighborhood commercial streets that have benefited from historic preservation. We got some folks watching from Sawyer, Michigan. We've got some folks from Downers Grove. Lots of territory to cover. Okay, we've got some folks who are in Hyde Park, South Kenwood, and like the Bryn Mawr Historic District. I like it too. Great Art Deco buildings on that stretch. Also, Lee and David like Clark Street in Andersonville. You are placing, you're kind of circumscribing me where I live. I've got a little bit of Clark Street in Andersonville and a little bit of Bryn Mawr Historic District nearby. We've got some folks from Itasca tonight, from Homewood. All right, well, we're going to get started in just a minute. So I want to kind of get the show on the road here. First of all, hello, good evening. My name is Adam. I work at the Chicago Architecture Center, who are in the midst of putting on our Open House Chicago Festival. In fact, the 10th anniversary of Open House Chicago, a very special year, not for reasons that have to do with a pandemic, but because we've been doing this for a long time. And we're just so happy to be able to honor this special anniversary. However, given the circumstances, we are honoring it in a very particular kind of way. Most of our programming is virtual this year. And the best way to be able to engage with the slate of Open House Chicago programs is through our app. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put into the chat section, going to all the attendees, a couple ways to download our app if you have not done so already. If you are the owner of an iPhone, you would go to the Apple Store. If you have an Android, you'd go to Google Play. And you type in Open House Chicago, and a nice little teal app will come up. Go ahead and download that. It's absolutely free. And from there, you can explore all kinds of things. We've got over 20 neighborhoods represented in here, going all the way from Roseland and Pullman at the south end of the city, all the way up to northern suburbs, including Kenilworth and Winnetka and Glencoe, even beyond the city up at the top. In between that, you've got all kinds of trails that you can use to explore one neighborhood in depth, maybe along a particular theme. There are individual sites you can explore. There are ways you can enhance your experience while in a neighborhood, such as restaurants and places that you can visit and, encourage the, spend some of your money in the neighborhood as well. Lots of different things that you can do. In addition to that, we also have a whole slate of virtual programs, including one that you are participating in right now as we speak. And I'm including a link to some of our programs that are coming up. So you can go and explore some of those, just so I can let you know immediately what's coming up. Tomorrow, At 10 a.m., we have a program called Get to Know Your House, Rogers Park Edition, where we will be learning a little bit how to conduct some historic house research, specifically looking at Rogers Park, but lessons that apply all over the place. That's 10 a.m. tomorrow. It is free. We also have a program called Changing the Narrative, African Americans in Evanston, that is coming up on October 21st at noon. It is also a free program, talking a little bit about recent efforts by the city of Evanston to recognize sites and buildings that speak to the African American experience in shaping Chicago's closest suburb to the north. So definitely don't miss that. It's going to be wonderful. And then the next one beyond that is called Stories of parentheses Immigration, Sites of Unity. So we are talking about migration and we are talking about immigration as well. This is going to be 1 hour on October 22nd at noon as well. It is also free. These are just 3 that are coming up among many, many more. So if you'd like to register for any of these programs, go ahead into the chat feature where you can go ahead and click on a link and sign up for one of these programs. I definitely encourage it. It's a great opportunity to check out some really remarkable stories about Chicago's neighborhoods. I'd like to thank our presenting sponsor, Wintrust, and also a thank you to the National Endowment for the Humanities CARES Act grant program, which helped us fund Open House Chicago this year, as well as the National Endowment for the Arts, ComEd, the Tawani Foundation, and Regina Stein and Roland James. If you are not a member of the Chicago Architecture Center, now is a wonderful time to become a member. It gives you access to programs you wouldn't necessarily be able to access as a non-member, as well as discounts and free tours and all kinds of things. So enjoy the perks of OHC and enjoy CAC throughout the year by becoming a member. You can also join by clicking the link that I am putting in the chat. Look at all these resources in the chat. You don't even have to do any work. We're doing it for you. And lastly, before we get started, if you represent our greatest friends and allies by attending programs like this and getting involved in Open House Chicago, if you feel compelled at any point to make a donation, I will also include a link for that as well. Thank you for supporting us and for choosing to celebrate art and Chicago with us. So that should be all of the links. I am going to bring Andrea Reed out here. Andrea, if you would come back from behind the curtain. Good evening, Andrea. How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I am well. I'm going to give you a little bit of an intro if you don't mind.
Please do.
So Andrea has been the executive director for the Greater Roseland Chamber of Commerce since its inception in 2009. She is on the board of the Illinois Green Alliance, Preservation Chicago, and Women Gathering for Justice. She also serves as co-chair for the Coalition for a Modern Metro Electric and commissioner for the Special Service Area number 71. So welcome, Andrea.
Thank you again. A wonderful introduction. Again, I am Andrea Reed, Executive Director for the Greater Roseland Chamber. I welcome you all to this conversation about the future of Roseland and investment through preservation in particular. I would also like to thank Alderman Bill for affording me the opportunity to represent the Rosen community as the executive director for over the past 11 plus years. We are going to start with a 5-minute video providing a history of the community and its present challenges. We will then begin a panel discussion facilitated by Preservation Chicago Director of Community Engagement, Mary Lou Seidel. We hope to have 20 minutes to address any questions from our attendees. Thank you to the Chicago Architecture Center and Open House Chicago for making programs like this available and promoted throughout Chicago, the Chicagoland area. Thank you again for your interest in this program and in helping to build a greater Roseland. Thank you so much. The Roseland community was settled in 1849 by Dutch immigrants. The Rosen area at that time was known as High Prairie. Dutch residents of Roseland were abolitionists, and several homes in the area were stations on the Underground Railroad. The Rosen Michigan Avenue commercial corridor runs between 107th Street and 115th Street, with the core commercial districts between 110th and 115th. It was once a thriving and bustling commercial district called the Jewel of the South Side. Michigan Avenue would become a major shopping district that served several nearby communities, including Pullman and Riverdale. In 1873, James Bowen, president of the Calumet Chicago Land and Dock Company, named the area Roseland because of all the beautiful flowers in the neighborhood. It was annexed into the city of Chicago in 1892. As jobs left the steel mills, auto plants, and the Pullman Car Company, the Roseland community began to decline. That decline accelerated in the 1960s and 1970s. Suburban business owners opened shop in the commercial corridor, but they had little interest in helping Roseland thrive and prosper. Private investors were not putting money into the commercial buildings along Michigan Avenue. The city did not invest equitably in the needs of the Roseland community, and the condition of homes, businesses, schools, and infrastructure declined. Over the decades, some historic buildings have been covered with mid-century facades, and many other iconic commercial buildings have been lost to demolition. It is important to protect and restore what is left to honor the legacy of this remarkable community and promote economic revitalization along the commercial corridor. The community completed a historic property survey in 2019, and it is now focused on protecting the extraordinary built environment that remains. There are great block clubs throughout Roseland that have successfully promoted housing stabilization and robust community networks. The commercial corridor is the next logical step to building a strong Roseland. There are great success stories on Michigan Avenue. Visit Ware's Ranch Steakhouse to meet some incredible owners of this legacy business. If you haven't been to Old Fashioned Donuts, you are missing out on some fine donuts. It is time to use historic preservation as an economic development driver along Michigan Avenue. Place Economics, a national organization that does city-level preservation impact studies, notes that historic preservation is an excellent tool to drive downtown revitalization, heritage tourism, improve property values, and jobs and income. We are a proud community, and we look forward to driving the economic recovery on South Michigan Avenue, Greater Roseland, where great things are happening.
Hi, welcome. Welcome everybody, and thanks for joining us. My name is Mary Lou Seidel. I'm the Director of Community Engagement for Preservation Chicago. My work focuses on community-driven planning in traditionally disinvested neighborhoods to identify what is important to communities and develop strategies to keep those places intact. Prior to joining Preservation Chicago, I worked as the Chicago Field Director at the National Trust for Historic Preservation. I have more than 30 years experience in community organizing and community development. I'd like to welcome all of the panelists to join us again and turn their cameras on and their audio on, or maybe just their cameras right now while I introduce them. You've already met Andrea Reed, who is a great, experienced and passionate advocate for the Michigan Avenue Commercial Corridor in Roseland. We at Preservation Chicago are proud that she serves on our board of directors. Paul Petratus is a lifelong Chicago resident who is a musician, photographer, and historian. He grew up in Roseland and lives in Pullman. A local expert on Roseland history, he was an historic advisor to the writing of the book Down an Indian Trail in 1849, The Story of Roseland. Cleveland Tucker Jr. is the president of the Roseland Heights Community Association and a member of the Redline Extension Coalition. More than 2 decades ago, he began an effort to enhance and improve the quality of life in this neighborhood, focusing on making its schools and businesses stronger and more vital. Erica Selke is an urban planner with the City of Chicago Department of Planning and Development. She's the lead planner for the Far South region, which includes the Invest Southwest corridors on Michigan Avenue, 111th Street, and Commercial Avenue. Dan Kleiber has been with the City of Chicago for 25 years, 19 of those at the Department of Planning and Development, serving in various roles, including Southside neighborhood planning, citywide planning, plan development, lakefront review, and more recently as part of the historic preservation team. So again, welcome all. I wanted to start with a question. I'm going to start with a few questions. We do want to leave plenty of time, but as I said, as the program goes on, please feel free to input any questions you might have for the panelists. We're really hoping to leave as close to 20 minutes for attendee questions as possible. Sorry about that. Let me get my... The National Trust for Historic Preservation's Older, Smaller, Better report has been done both nationally and at the city level in Chicago. It notes that businesses thrive that are based in older, smaller, historic buildings. These areas are more likely to support thriving nightlife areas and shopping districts and support smaller and minority-owned business owners. What resources can be used to grow restoration of Roseland's historic commercial buildings, and what new tools do you think we need to make that happen? I would start. You want to start, Andrea? Would you like to lead off? Oh, yes, go ahead, Andrea. You start off and then I will introduce the alderman after.
Why don't you introduce him?
Okay.
Now? Yeah.
All right. Sorry. So
No
we do have Alderman, 9th Ward Alderman Beal on the call on our webinar tonight. So I would like to introduce him and give him a moment to address the panelists. Thank you for joining us, Alderman Beal.
No problem. Thanks for having me. Let me just say I'm extremely excited. Andrea, you did a wonderful job with that presentation to really highlight the rich history that we have out here in the Rosen Pullman community. We've been doing so many great things out here over the last 10 years with partnerships with the Greater Roseland Chamber of Commerce, my SSA. We've created over 1,500 jobs, and we've have over 450 million of private public investment. Crime is down in the 5th District, in the 9th Ward, Roseland Pullman community, over 33%. The only community in the city of Chicago's 15 targeted areas that have a reduction in crime overall, over 33%. So the work that we've been doing out here and the partnerships that we have is really impressive to see that even with the pandemic, we've been able to grow. We just opened a new Amazon facility, the first in the city of Chicago. We're going to be having that ribbon cutting in a couple of days. But all those rich things that we've been able to create, and one of the things that excites me more than anything else is preserving the history. And that's where you all are coming in, preserving the history, the integrity of the infrastructure that we have in place, because we know that we can redevelop the community without disturbing the history and the integrity of the infrastructure that we have. So I think that's the charge that we have going forward, is to highlight some of those buildings that you showed in your presentation, and take those facades, keep those structures, and build around them at the same time, so our community continue to grow, but at the same time preserving the history and the integrity of our area. So thank you all so much for all the work you're doing to partner with us out here in the community. And you know, all the hard work doesn't go unnoticed. So thank you all so much.
Thanks. Thank you for joining us.
Mhm.
Okay, now we will go back to my question here about, let's start with Andrea, on resource that can be used to grow restoration of Roseland's historic commercial buildings, and what new tools might we need to make that happen?
Well, I have been an advocate for preservation long before I actually became involved and engaged with Preservation Chicago and our wonderful executive director, Ward Miller, and all of our team with the organization. We've been working really hard to find a way to transform Michigan Avenue. We've done a lot of things. I've been to many conferences. I've looked at Main Street, Illinois Main Street years ago. And, Pullman was the game changer when the area was designated as a national monument. That was a game changer for our community. And it helped people to understand that there is value here. There's such a rich history. So why not work with that? I mean, this is a tool that has been overlooked, and many people just want to come and knock the old buildings down. But it is important for us to save the character and the history within our corridor, that we have a story to tell. These buildings, even though the These People store is gone, but we can still tell the story. The vision that I'm hoping we will be able to embrace with the help of Invest Southwest and Alderman and Preservation Chicago and all of us that are working so hard to make this happen, is to put historic markers along the corridor. We want to see Michigan Avenue as a destination place for our visitors. We're expecting over 300,000 tourists to come into this area. And so, when they finish touring Pullman, they can come on down the strip here on 111th onto Michigan Avenue. And we're hoping that we will have some great activities for them, things to experience and to see, and that they could share in the story and the rich history of our community.
Great, thank you. Cleveland, can you hear, can you unmute your line, and you want to take a stab at that question on what?
Sure. I heard the question, and it's a very pertinent question as to what you can do, or what tools you have to start to rebuild the neighborhood. And I think the most critical thing about rebuilding anything is you have anchor institutions there. We have churches, we have schools, we have institutions that are rooted in community, and they've been in the area a long time. So I think it's critical to utilize those institutions to help you roll out a plan and to facilitate some of the things you need. And most crucial of all for redevelopment is loans. And if you can get the local businesses that have enough funds and banks to reinvest in the community, because without the money, you can't do anything. So if you're focused on rebuilding using those institutions that are already there to implement activities that help recruit and employ the neighborhood residents, and also will attract other people who would like to open businesses in the community.
Great. Paul, Paul's waving his hand.
Yeah, we pay a lot of, in Roseland, they pay a lot of lip service to Pullman, but we need to make that connection between Roseland and Pullman a physical thing. Tomorrow I'm on a panel, we're talking about how to restore and redevelop and re-landscape 111th Street, going west from the expressway to Cottage. And the first thing I'm going to say is we got to keep going from Cottage right down to Palmer Park. Those 3 little blocks there are crucial to getting people to go from the National Monument up the hill to Roseland to see what's going on. Without attaching yourself physically to Pullman, Roseland kind of can only just point to Pullman's successes and hope we can get near that level. We have to look at extending almost a boulevard from Cottage Grove up the hill to Michigan Avenue. Oh, I graduated Fenger in '67, so you can put me there.
Okay. Erica, any thoughts?
Sure, thank you. So one of the mayor's initiatives is the Invest Southwest program, which a couple of you have mentioned so far. So this is where the city is concentrating resources and investments in 10 different communities across the the south and the west sides of Chicago. And here we're focusing specifically on Michigan Avenue and 111th Street. So this is an opportunity, again, to sort of concentrate those resources, coordinate all the investments that different agencies and departments across the city are making to make sure that we leverage them and leverage them with private investment as well. So that is one of the things that the city is trying to do to pull in more investments. We're looking at doing RFPs or requests for proposals for land along the corridors, working to have small grants for business owners and property owners. So we really, see the great value in Michigan Avenue and want to build on that. This is certainly something we can build on rather than having to start from scratch. So this is a great opportunity to sort of focus those investments in one area.
Great, thanks. Dan, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Oh, sure. As Erica said, I'm also in DPD. As Mary Lou said at the beginning, I'm in the historic preservation side of DPD. We recently, I think for the first time, the city is going to be taking a real in-depth look at the history of Roseland. We have engaged a consultant to write us a history of Roseland from the beginning, as the video suggested, up through the period of 1970, to look at the social, economic history, as well as the architectural history as a starting point to help with this overall tool. We don't know, I have to repeat, we don't know if this is going to culminate in a landmark district or possibly some other type of tool. But we just recently, in the last couple of weeks, have engaged a consultant, and we're excited about that task that is before us too. And I have to make a plug right now really quick too, that we will need, as part of this assignment, we would like to be able to enlist the help of area residents, business owners, to help us actually write this report through some oral histories. So I just wanted to put that little plug in there.
That's great. Thank you. I'd like this question, and if what your thoughts are on tools that might be needed to support entrepreneur development and training in the Roseland area for Roseland residents who might be interested in opening a business along or near the commercial corridor, and how can some of the bigger barriers like access to capital be overcome in the Roseland community? I don't want to always start with Andrea, but yeah, as the chamber representative, you might be a good
She's got all the money.
I wish I did have all the money.
Money falling out of her pockets.
Yes, it's all over the place. I have so much money, I just don't know what to do with it all. Yeah, I tease the alderman all the time about, I tell him if I can't make any money, can I at least make a difference? So that's what I'm working on. So yes, with our entrepreneurs, it's really, really important that, and looking at what we have been dealing with for a long time in this community, we need to have people that live in the community, that have a stake in the community to have a business in the community. Therefore, the money that's earned here will stay here. Currently, that's not the situation. And it's very unfortunate because, it's just like having a plant. If you don't water it and nurture it, it will shrivel up and die. And so the result of the money not staying here to work with our tax base, to improve our schools, to provide all the resources that we need locally, that has to change in order for this community to change. So it's not just preservation, but it's a combination of many things. So I am partnering with several organizations to begin with financial literacy. We need to do that. We need to work with our local residents to help them overcome some of those barriers. That's another challenge for us. You have a community that has been suffered from disinvestment and resources. So we have to do a little bit more and be more intentional about how we get this done. And so we want to, I'm working with several organizations, as I stated, and working hand in hand with our local mom and pop residents that are working for a business idea from their kitchen table, and they can't afford brick and mortar, but we want to create an environment for them as far as pop-ups, vendor space, activities. We're going to be presenting something hopefully in the early spring or summer, a Shop Roseland event, where our local businesses can have an opportunity to bring their business, a product or service to market, and test to see if it's a product or service that the community would want. And then we can build upon that. And hopefully at some point we can put people in a brick and mortar or a pop-up or shared space where they can have a visible local business.
Great. Erica or Dan, do you have any thought, like between Invest Southwest and any other, city programs or programs that might be in development that might be supporting, I think that's one of the issues is growing wealth within the Roseland community that stays there and grows more wealth. So.
Absolutely. So one of the programs that the city started about 3 or 4 years ago is the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund, where people are allowed to build higher density downtown in exchange for contributing to a fund that then will go to small businesses on the south and west sides of Chicago. So this is a great opportunity for a business owner to improve their building or to move into a building, as Andrea said, with people into brick and mortar. We're not there yet. There have been some changes to the program where originally it was it was a reimbursement program. So people needed to outlay the capital before they could be reimbursed. And that has a lot of barriers to it if you can't get the appropriate loans. So we've worked on that a bit. I don't think we're there yet, but we have seen some growth in that program, and we've had some success stories, and we've had some businesses on the corridor take part in receiving those grants. So we do have some of those tools, and certainly have the opportunity to improve them. And the other thing I think, and Andrea brought this up, that we have really great businesses already located on the corridor. Edwards Fashions and Old Fashioned Donuts and Bass Furniture. These are people who have been very successful in their businesses. And, I'd love to think of a way to have those business owners help and mentor other business owners that like to start on the corridor. So we have a great resource there as well.
Yeah, that's great. Paul, did you have any burning thoughts on your mind?
Yeah, it may be that the historic district time has come and gone. When Pullman was designated Chicago's first landmark district, I helped to draw up the boundaries. And it's really hard to find continuity along Michigan Avenue on any of these blocks because there's been so much attrition. When I give my tours, I begin to talk about things like historic intersections. 111th in Michigan as an intersection is a cogent piece. 111th in Indiana is an incredibly under-recognized intersection within this Michigan Avenue corridor. We actually have a block along 111th Street where all the businesses are the same, all the houses and churches are the same as they were 120 years ago. We can't point to any blocks along Michigan Avenue that have that much coherency. But speaking of Chicago, we got to make sure that the city doesn't come in and tear down an old brick house without any of us experts knowing about it. That happened on our watch. That is our bad. The Boone House should still be there. We should still be talking about how to do that. So we have to make sure that this demolition crazy administration that it currently apparently is not playing well with others. We just have to make sure we are in touch with the folks who are in charge of what stays and what goes in our neighborhood. So let's look at historic intersections. The concept of historic buildings is viable, but anything bigger than that gets really bogged down.
You bring up a good point, and maybe I can direct this to Cleveland as well. This issue of integrity or continuity, when you are looking at an historic area in a predominantly or traditionally a community of color that has endured, decades of disinvestment, it's not, it will inherently lack some of that continuity. But is that a reason to dismiss it as a potential? And certainly landmark districts are not the only way to elevate this commercial corridor, but is it equitable to say that because for decades there was rampant disinvestment in Roseland, it's deteriorated significantly, so therefore we should probably not pursue that sort of a designation? Cleveland, do you have any thoughts on that? Or
Well, I think that if you look at Michigan Avenue, the layperson or someone who is not really paying attention will say it has no continuity because there's nothing of value to save. But you have to realize in Andrea's presentation, she spoke about the mid-century modernization of the area. And if you look at the facade, if you looked at the old Gately's building, it looked like a 1940s building. But behind that facade, which most of them, if you pull that down, there is something of value there. And even with pulling that down and removing that, there is something of value there in the buildings that at the top, look at the tops. You see the street level view, you say, oh, there's nothing there. Just look up. If you look up to the top of the building, you'll see why that's something of value and should be saved.
Sure.
That drone piece was just perfect to present the avenue at that height.
Right.
That was perfect.
Yeah, you can thank Eric Rogers for that fabulous drone video footage.
That was beautiful.
I had to bribe him with an apple fritter from Old Fashioned Donuts, but we got there just in time to grab some fresh ones. So.
With or without nuts?
Without. I don't have nuts on fruits.
I'd like to throw in a quick comment, if I may.
Sure.
Mary Lou.
Sure.
When Cleveland just mentioned looking up at the buildings, that's kind of what happened to me back when this whole thing, when I had this idea. And I looked up at the buildings and I thought, oh my God, these buildings, there's a lot of history here. And when I started researching and looking at Main Street projects, Illinois Main Street in particular, I started going to other areas that had already received the Main Street designation. And one of those areas was Libertyville. And if you ever get a chance, those that are listening, to look at the Libertyville website, and you will see buildings that look just like our buildings. if they were all dressed up, that's how they would look. And it's absolutely phenomenal to me. You know, and that area is so far from Roseland, but still, you know, it's a model, and that's what really got me excited. So they are worth saving. It really will add to the character of our community, and again, tell the story. And we're the cousin to Pullman, so why not?
Sure. And Paul, there's a great, you know, your point about the connection between 111th, between Pullman and Roseland. When I first went down 111th and I was really doing an inventory of some of the buildings there, there's like, I think it's, I don't know if it was a currency exchange, but it's got so many gaudy signs on the front of it that the first time I went down the street, at first I was like, I didn't even notice the historic. I was so overwhelmed by the, you know, cash for gold or whatever it was.
Right.
But you do, there's a lovely building just to the north of Ware's Ranch Steakhouse, which is another great legacy business that has a massive screen over the front of it. But if you see behind that, there's a phenomenal historic building there. It's worth pointing out in that video footage, we introduced the 5-minute video. 3 of the buildings that were highlighted in that video have been demolished since last year, either by fire for Gately's People Store or by demolition because of, you know, the Department of Buildings, you know, assessment that it was imminently public health threat. So I do want to move on to the next question because we want to make sure we leave time. I see we have like 9 or 10 questions from the attendees. I'm going to skip to the Chicago Neighborhood Initiative, Chicago Booth, and U.S. Bank just released a study on the place-based community investment in the Pullman Historic District. I think we're going to throw a link to that report in the chat box for anyone who's interested. But along Michigan Avenue in Roseland, we do not have a Ryerson site or the potential to attract a large Walmart type development to the neighborhood. But what can be done at a transformative scale to really spark revitalization of the Michigan Avenue commercial corridor?
Do something with 115th in Michigan. That was a TIF site for 15 years and nothing happened. You know, that would anchor that whole stretch from 115th to 111th. That's the biggest undeveloped property.
Sure. I guess from our perspective, we're looking at, you know, some of the more historic buildings and how can we, you know, really have a transformative impact with, you know, whether there's, you know, assembling a large contiguous segment of buildings for revitalization. Erica, what do you think?
Sure. So a couple things. The city does own a lot of property along Michigan Avenue, which is, you know, primed to be redeveloped as part of this initiative. And a lot of the parcels are next door to buildings, like for instance, the Rosen Theater building, which is a beautiful historic building, privately owned, but surrounded by city land. Is there any way we can bring the private property owner in and come up with a development scenario where we could add, you know, new storefront to the front of, or to alongside the Roseland Theater? So there are great opportunities there. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the Cta Redline Extension that is proposed to move through Roseland. There will be a stop at 115th in Michigan, right at the site that Paul mentioned. So, you know, that's a great opportunity. I think we'll see a lot more ridership in the area, and, you know, we'll bring many more people to Michigan Avenue as well. So that's certainly a big transformative thing we're looking at in the near future.
Sure. Cleveland, any thoughts on that? And then I'll go to you, Andrea, if that's all right. Dan, jump in if you have any.
Well, I don't know what happened to Cleveland, but anyway, one of the things that I learned in the research as far as the Main Street corridor in Libertyville, they had the same issue that we had. Is, you know, how do you attract visitors to your corridor? And they couldn't get anyone to take those empty spaces and stores on their main street. So what they started doing was having activities, programs around that area. And it made people, the local people, think about, wow, this is nice. And maybe I can have a business here. And now you can't find a vacancy in Libertyville. So, that's some of the things that I would like for us to consider in our development is, one, identifying what are the stores that we want to see? What type of businesses do we want to have here? So that, we don't have to go outside of the community for all of our goods and services. Right now, there's a huge leakage of services in this community. And so that will help if we could have local businesses that provide those needs. And then creating positive loitering, where we can have, some of these empty spaces. We could have food truck vendors, fresh produce, pop-up shops along the corridor, to create that activity so that people will begin to feel safe and feel that this is my home and this is my neighborhood, and I can come up here and enjoy a cup of coffee, or relaxing in a nice warm day. We could serve hot chocolate and candy canes during the winter months, and Christmas tree lighting, and all of these different things add to the sense of home and character and place for the community.
But how do
we just have to get to stay positive, so we can get to that point.
That public perception, though?
Pardon me?
How do we reverse the public perception of the wild hundreds?
Well, I beg folks, please take that away. And I'm working on another project right now. I don't want to get into it too much, but I'm also on the board of an organization called Illinois Green Alliance. And we are working to introduce energy efficiencies and sustainability concepts to the community. The end goal to that is to work with our residents. And I mean, it starts with the locals first. To get them excited, teach them how to save money on their energy costs, making their homes more sustainable. With that, we want to begin to have activities, block club parties. We want to create a 5-star award system where homeowners will receive just a little yard sign to say this home has been awarded 5-star status. And then as people come into the neighborhood, we would like to be able to do trolley tours throughout Roseland, to kind of help change that mindset that, wow, this is a nice neighborhood.
Sure.
And people will begin to think about, well, I could have a home here. Or maybe I could have a business here. So we have to turn the negative into a positive by changing the mindset.
Yeah.
And we already have a lot of that already. You drive through Roseland and West Pullman and Pullman, there are beautiful homes here. I know that we have the owner now of the Frank Lloyd Wright House that's here in West Pullman, and I know that Mary Lou and Ward Miller are working with him. So that's another attraction for our community. That's huge. So we have to take the assets that we have, take what we got, and make what we want. How about that?
So I want to jump into a question from the attendees, and Alan and Linda Mellis ask, and I guess I would direct this to Cleven and Andrea, and we have at least 10 questions that are open right now. So I want to be sure we leave time for as many as possible, but what kind of businesses are you hoping to attract along the commercial corridor? And let's start with Cleven. Are you available, Cleven?
Yes, I am.
Thanks.
Kind of businesses that, especially for my neighborhood, we want to attract those businesses that you don't normally have. You know, whenever you're going to see a small theater group perform, you have to go to the north side or the High Park, or if you want a specialty gift. So yes, we need meat and potatoes. And I know that that's something that's important and that's lacking. But in the quest for those kinds of businesses, I don't want to overlook those kinds of businesses that my sister always called the cutesy stores, where there's really nothing of in value that you need for everyday life, but it's really enjoyable and fun to go shopping there. And so if you have those kind of places, when people on vacation and with the large number of people that are going to be coming to the Pullman National Monument, those are the kind of shops that they're looking for, because the stuff that they buy when they're at home are the meat and potatoes. So when they go shopping, when they're on vacation, they like to find things that normally you can't find. And also those people who commented on they love High Park because High Park has those kinds of unusual businesses that you don't see. And I think in developing the area, not only should we have those critical hardware, Home Depot type places, but you should have a florist shop or a bakery that specializes in a particular edible thing. So I just think in planning, you should look at the aesthetics as well as the practical.
Sure. Thanks. Andrea, do you want to add to that or?
Yeah, you know, that's one of the things that I recognize that, you know, we have a lot of the same types of stores. They're all competing with each other, and I can't tell you how many calls I get from some of the business owners that, well, he's stealing my customer. Well, you guys are selling the same stuff. You need to differentiate or die, because basically retail is dying on the vine.
Right.
But our goal in identifying some of those unique shops, so people that make jewelry or shea butter or art, uh, uh, special hats, or, you know, there's so many different things that we have yet to learn about the talent that's here in our community. And so that's the other end goal of doing our project with energy efficiency and starting with the neighbors, is to identify who those people are and get them engaged to want to have a business. And we could work with them, um, you know, boots on the ground up to high level to get them into our corridor.
Okay. The next question as well address, you know, attracting visitors to Pullman to visit Roseland. And I think, Paul, you brought up that good point about the, you know, making a really physical, as much of a boulevard connection down 111th Street between the two neighborhoods. And I think, Cleveland, you addressed that as well with having shops that meet the needs of the Roseland community, but also can be attractive to visitors to Pullman. Is there anybody have any additional thoughts on that topic?
Well, the Metra conductors, when you stop at 111th, they say you don't want to go west. The conductors are telling you not to go to Roseland. So that involves public education, that involves partnerships. There needs to be signage on the Metra, needs to be signage on the CTA. We need a lot of communication within our existing city agencies. You know, not only did the Boone House go down, but other things may be on the docket that we should be getting involved in. You know, we don't want to lose any more historic buildings, especially that lovely stuff along 111th in Michigan with the bay window. That's from 1888. That was the first big commercial expansion of Michigan Avenue. That intersection is so important.
Sure.
It's almost as if once that intersection is thriving and there's a boulevard that goes down to the Metra at 111th, you'll see that Michigan Avenue looking a little bit different. I know Bass Furniture doesn't want to hear that because it's 3 blocks to the south. But just the physical distance between Pullman and Rosen can't be ignored. That's the elephant in the room, really.
Okay. We have a question from Jack Spicer and Kathy Gruber about what percentage of the commercial real estate is locally owned. I don't have a percentage number, but of the buildings, we've researched ownership of many of the buildings that we deemed as having historic integrity, and they were almost, I mean, I would guess over 90% are owned by people outside of Chicago, and a good amount from the south suburbs. But I think that's one of the challenges Andrea brings up every time we talk about Roseland is there's a great deal of business building owners who, pull down their metal shade at the end of the night and take their money and their interest home with them.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely.
We have Cecilia Harrison asks, she's a homeowner in Rosemore and has a home-based medical billing company and would love to purchase a commercial property along the corridor to offer medical coding training for the residents within the community.
Yeah.
But she doesn't know where to start. Are there any programs or any local bank participation I can take advantage of that will help get this started? And I guess that's a good question for Andrea.
Yeah, I've actually, I've met with Cecilia via Zoom, and she's really concerned about not having access to enough spaces to look at to start her business. And we have worked with and talked to the Cook County Assessor's Office and Recorder of Deeds to find out how can we get more data or more information on who owns these buildings. They're just ghosts. And I know that they're working on some laws right now to change that, because what they're doing, a lot of the building owners, and as you stated, Mary Lou, most of them they're not tied to this community at all. They own the buildings, but they're writing it off as a bad debt while they leave our community in blighted conditions. And it's a sin and a shame, and it really does need to change. We have a challenge, or we know the buildings are vacant. I have people call the chamber all the time. They call the alderman's office. They feel like somebody should just give them the building, and we're always telling them, we can't give you someone's building. Someone owns the building. We just can't give it to awkward. You because it's vacant. Doesn't mean we can just say, here, it's yours.
Does the city of Chicago provide a list of properties they own along the Michigan Avenue corridor? Do we know what the city owns?
No, I mean, Erica kind of put something out a couple of weeks ago during our roundtable, so I know that she has some idea, of course, but we haven't yet sat down and talked about what plans we have for those spaces. So I know that is to come.
And there may be an opportunity with some of the troubled properties for the Cook County Land Bank Authority to get involved in helping to acquire some of these buildings that are troubled. And, even when there is a building that has a store on the first floor, by the way, you can get it's probably the highest access point for leggings in any neighborhood I've been in Chicago. If you're looking for leggings, every store in Roseland, I think, sells leggings. Even when there is a store or a space on the commercial first floor, almost always the upper floors are vacant and boarded up, and that potential to have those units. And I know they're probably, hopefully they're not leasing them because they're not in a condition to be occupied, they're uninhabitable. But if there were resources to develop units of housing up above there, it could help offset the cost of operating the building, and it could provide more opportunities for more entrepreneurial businesses to operate on the first floor.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that I presented in a conversation. I'm not sure if that was with you, Erica, or who I was talking to about this, but there are great opportunities to use that space the upper levels of these buildings can provide affordable housing, especially for entrepreneur that's trying to get their business up and going. We could come up with a creative plan to, integrate them and provide affordable housing and a place where they can grow their business at the same time. I think that would be a great story to tell and a plan that we could use over and over and over.
Well, that's old school because you always were living above your store. You'd come to Roseland, you do the store, and you live upstairs. That's old school, and that always works.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it keeps, and there's a lot of activity in life when people are living there and shopping there. We're running pretty short on time. A quick question, Paul, where can people get a copy of the Down and Indian Trail book?
I wish I knew, but I think you can go to Trinity College bookshop, and anybody who's on Facebook should go to Roseland History. That's my site. There's 4,000 of us who really care about this community and its history. So that's Roseland History on Facebook.
Thanks. And Dan, John DeCoker asked, how can we sign up to help with gathering information on the history of Roseland?
As I said earlier, well, simply you can call me, you can contact me. As part of our historic research report, yes, we need some volunteers who could share their experiences growing up in Roseland, and maybe whatever. It could be anything. Shopping at Gately's and what was it like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And historic businesses, past and present. You never know what little nugget there might be in there, which we can't find on a database, or that is only housed in somebody's head at the moment. So,
or on Roseland History.
Thanks for that plug, Paul. That's your last plug for that website.
That's good. I just want to make sure Daniel becomes a member tonight.
So I want to keep going. Besides Eric Rogers saying he can always be bribed with apple fritters from Old Fashioned Donuts, what about a Chicago landmark district that encompasses 111th and 113th along Palmer Park and Brooks Academy, extending to the west side of Michigan Avenue? And then again, a second question about landmarking areas of Roseland to join it to Pullman. And I think we sort of, Paul, you addressed that some in your conversation. I think that's certainly increasing. I just Sunday, we drove through Roseland and we were kind of looking at that really compressed railroad overpass that is not welcoming and connecting the two communities. So I think there's some real potential there to, in whatever shape that takes, whether it's a landmark district or some investment of funds or private resources to.
It may be a historic corridor uniting the two, calling it Florence Boulevard, or, some public art doesn't hurt, get a butcher shop in there, get a baker.
Right.
So.
And then the aesthetics of just streetscaping. If you have that, the unique look, the authentic street lamps and cobblestone, so you can still pull that same look of Pullman down to Michigan Avenue. There's the old, I think, National Bank building at 111th and King Drive, and then all of those buildings along Indiana are very vintage. And then there's the old library on Indiana on the north side of the street. So you can highlight things that are beyond Cottage Grove Avenue that pull you there. A lot of things are missing. And then of course there's Gwendolyn Brooks. So that's a nice area and a park. So there's not a lot of buildings, but whatever is along that route, you highlight it, and that will pull you on up to Michigan Avenue.
Yeah.
And the cutesy shops.
Yeah, cutesy shops.
And I do, Britt Savage brought up Bass Furniture building, and Eddie Davis, who runs that, and that's a legacy business. We have targeted, really highlight, not targeted, that's a horrible term, sorry. We have
Wow.
highlighted the legacy businesses along Michigan Avenue, and Bass Furniture, of course, is one of them. And he did, Britt did note that Bass Furniture is leasing space for Cecilia to consider. I want to get to one last question because we are over time. Could the panelists comment on, this is John DeCoker again, could the panelists comment on the amount of TIF funds available for Roseland compared to places like Lincoln Yards and the 78 or some of those near South Side developments?
Ooh,
The alderman here? No.
I'll leave that to Erica. Erica knows where the money is.
We like to leave on a really loaded question note.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we do have TIF funds available in the corridors, and as I mentioned with the Invest Southwest initiative, we're looking to use those funds in a really smart way along the corridor. And one of the things, you know, if you could find a silver lining in, you know, the pandemic, the state has provided more funding for different infrastructure projects in the city. So we'll be able to perhaps get some streetscape funding for Michigan Avenue out of state and federal funds.
Yeah.
We won't have to use TIF for things like that. And we can really focus it on the existing buildings and business owners. So absolutely, you know, we're looking at those funds and figuring out with the community how to use them smartly.
Thanks. Okay, I think that is about all we have. Adam Rubin, do you want to come back in and wrap it up for us? Or thank you all to the panelists, and thank you for everybody who joined us tonight. We are going to continue having these conversations about Roseland and more communities throughout Chicago, and we're really grateful that you could join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Lou, for doing such a fabulous job.
Thanks.
And thank you all of you for being here tonight. On behalf of the CAC and Open House Chicago, it's a pleasure to host you. And for everybody who's watching tonight, if you have not yet downloaded the Open House Chicago app from either the Apple Store or from Google Play, we encourage you to do it and go out and explore Chicago neighborhoods over the next few days and come back and attend a virtual program. There's lots to do. And even though it's a little different than it's been before, it's still an Open House Chicago community. So thank you for being here tonight and have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
And I'll just put out a
Good night.
props for that CAC app, the Open House Chicago app. I used it Sunday and it's remarkable. So it's really great. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
So.